And welcome to a brand new episode of Geek Bites, brought to you by the
Geek Buddies! Hey!
We are here to do our first ever review of Dune Prophecy. We know that some of you have been asking us to look at this series. Well, the first episode didn't really get us 100% on board, but these last two episodes have been fantastic. So we are going to sit down and review these, just me and Shannon McClung for this particular episode, but Michael Vogel is catching up with this Dune Prophecy, so we will be back in full force next week with all three of us. And if you were watching this today, look for our spoiler review of the first two episodes of Skeleton Crew coming up very soon as well. But Shannon and I are handling duties for both episode 2 and 3 here. We're definitely going to talk about 3 much more extensively, but we certainly want to talk about our thoughts on episode 2 as well. So sit back, relax, and enjoy that. But yeah, I'm John Rocha. He's Shannon McClung. Shannon, we don't have a lot of time to get into all the particulars of who the hell we are. Let's get into these episodes. So tell me overall what you think about the Dune Prophecy now as the third episode is finished. Where are you on it overall before we jump into our quick thoughts on episode 2 before we go extensively into episode 3?
So, as our audience probably already knows, I was not the biggest fan of those Dune movies.
I
like part 2 more than part 1. So, just in terms of the world, I'm like, I'll watch it, but this just isn't my world. And I certainly don't take anything away from folks that do enjoy it.
Yeah.
I had many folks point out that who hadn't read the book that they had enjoyed it just fine, and the problem was clearly on this side of the mic. But that just wasn't the case with me. I was just like, yeah, this is a world that I can tell the craft that's being put into it, but it's just not connecting with me.
Right.
So, I was really, really surprised. I actually enjoyed the first episode. I think like any HBO series, there is a lot of ground that they're laying before the story really takes off. But I thought in terms of what they gave us in that first episode, I'm like, okay, I'm in. I'm really interested in the character of Desmond, the origins of the Bene Gesserit. I'm like, oh, this is neat. And then I thought episode 2 was fantastic. I mean, just some really, really fantastic writing and some fantastic acting. And because we probably won't talk about it that much, I mean, the effects in this show are incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what a good effect should be. I mean, it should be in the background. You shouldn't notice it.
Yeah.
But anytime you get those wide shots of the ships coming in, I'm like, man, that looks so real. The world looks so real.
Yeah.
I think Emily Watson and Olivia Williams are great. This sort of sisterhood afterlife section where they put the one girl in, oh my gosh, that was one incredible filmmaking, but also absolutely terrifying. This is just, to me, this is just so well done. And as curious as I was to see where Holly was going, we only got a little bit of that in episode 3. The backstory of Valya and Tula, I thought was dynamite. And bringing in the great Mark Addy, anytime you have him grow out a beard and put him in the snow, it's like, there you go. That's there's Robert Baratheon. I'm really enjoying the series thus far, which again is kind of surprising because I've not traditionally been into this series as a whole.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing for you to say, because as you said, you took a chance on it because you haven't always been the biggest fan or you haven't been the biggest fan of the Dune movie. So taking a chance on it really had to work for you to keep your attention. I know how you can be picky about these kinds of things. So that speaks volumes about the show itself. I liked that first episode, but I agree with a lot of the criticism. If you watch my reaction, which is up on the channel, up on this channel, I liked it, but I thought it kind of sped to certain moments too quickly. Didn't give us time to sit and really savor these relationships and understand what's happening and really kind of grasp where everything is going. But as you said, before we started the show off mic, we were having our conversations. They just need to lay the groundwork of the basics of what's going on here so they can go, because I think this is only a 6-episode series. So they only have so much time to do the things that they need to do. But I will say that second episode, I agree with you, was fantastic. I really enjoyed that too. Wolves getting to see the inner machinations of what's going on here with the emperor and his people and his wife, and Desmond coming in, and what Desmond represents for them. Rakazi coming in, being all cocky and swaggering through, seeing what's going on with the son, with the princess and her need for revenge, Atreides and the rebels, and their he's a spy inside the castle here. What is that going to lead to? And then, of course, all of it leading to that verbal battle between Valya and Desmond there with each other. Like the fact that her voice worked to a degree, or maybe didn't work, and he was just playing along to mess with her. And now she's on the outs as we go into episode 3. So I thought that was a lot of action. And of course, the Lila stuff was super scary. I agree with you 100%. Absolutely terror-inducing to be able to go and see the bodies of the people who have died in the past, and then have Dorothea come back, who of course was subject to Valya's voice and got killed by her own knife because Valya made her do that. So there's a revenge factor here that's involved. So all of that was a great second episode to get us into this third episode, where we go back in time to see the story of Valya and Tula, while also checking in with Tula in present day of the show and her decision of what to do with Lila. And then at the end, that reveal, which I thought was massive, about what's actually been going on and what Mother Raquel was putting in motion here, and what is now, in essence, AI helping them carry out revenge. So it's just an interesting situation overall. But what are your let's talk a little bit of episode 2 before we dive into episode 3 here. Two Wolves. This one directed by John Cameron, written by Elizabeth Patton and Cora Donna. What stood out to you about episode 2? I know we kind of hit the broad strokes of what happened, but what are your thoughts on episode 2 specifically? What got you? What hooked you in? What made you want to see more from this world?
I mean, the reality of the world is the big thing. How you have you have Mark Strong's character, Carino, who is, he is the emperor of the galaxy, the universe. I'm not sure what the governing body is called. But how his fate is very much tied to the fate of Arrakis.
Yes.
Like if he cannot get that planet under control, then the other great houses, they're going to be gunning for him. And Rakazi is able to come in with this fleet of ships to be like, hey, this is something I can do for you. And you can see Rakazi he has his own motivations with this marriage. And the moments that he has with Carino and with Carino's wife about, this is not like, I can rip you off that throne. Like, it is just so fascinating to watch these power plays going on, and the little kind of sign language that the Bene Gesserit have with each other. Yeah. It's just, it's kind of like how Game of Thrones, when Game of Thrones was really, really good, like the political machinations that all of the families have, and you see the Bene Gesserit is kind of trying to pull the strings everywhere. And like they have this prophecy that they know that they're the ones that are supposed to be, they've been ruling from behind the scenes. They're trying to put one of theirs on the throne. It's just so compelling. And part of it is how seriously they approach the material. Now, I imagine at the end of this series, I probably will go back and watch the first Dune again and maybe have more of an appreciation for it, because part of the resistance that I had was I don't want to say unwelcoming, but they didn't do you any favors with Dune, for me at least. They didn't do you any favors as to explaining what this world is. And I feel like that's where Dune Prophecy is really doing a good job. This whole thing, like they talk about the war of the thinking machines and everything. Like, it's just a really interesting world that I want to know more about. The young actor in episode 1 who played Pruitt, what a dynamic young performer. Like, as Desmond is watching him burn from the inside out, I mean, that kid did a fantastic job. And it's really sad that we don't get to see him anymore because he's Ash. But just watching someone who has always been kind of high status, or at least the way that she's being presented to us with Alia has been so high status, watching her foundations rocked. It's really a testament to Emily Watson's performance. Like, it's so interesting. that moment of doubt that she has where she tells Desmond to plunge the dagger into his throat, and the moment where he takes off. And I had the same thing. I'm like, is he resisting, or does she have no power of it?
Right.
Like, is he actually playing possum right now? So all of that I think is really, really interesting. And another comparison to Game of Thrones for me is the whole idea, the history of the Atreides family and the Harkonnen family. So this is like the Starks and the Lannisters.
Right.
But the Harkonnens at this point are the Starks. And the Atreides are actually the Lannisters. I mean, it's just so interesting. And now I'm actually curious too, and maybe you'll be able to answer this question. Is Dune Prophecy based on any novel?
Yes.
Or is this okay?
Yeah, it's based on the novel Sisterhood of Dune, which is written by Brian Herbert, Kevin J. Anderson, and of course based on the novel Dune by Frank Herbert. So
that's his son then.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's who's written who wrote this book. And this is, I think, in the 2000s at some point. I don't remember exactly when this book came out, but this is one of those ones that they're using for this particular story. Yeah.
I mean, it's really, really compelling. Like, all the actors are doing such a great job. I never think that I'm watching Mark Strong. I think I'm watching this guy, this put upon ruler who is, holding on by his fingernails. And part of the beauty of not having any knowledge of what's about to happen is this is all brand new.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if they deviate from the source material, like, I'm not going to know, but if they deviate, I just hope they do it well, because thus far, everything they're doing for me as an audience member is working.
Yeah. I like the mystery that we got in episode 2, right? Because, like, from the beginning, who is on whose side, who's doing what, who's where, because all the stuff from episode 1, we got the relationships. We've got this young emperor who's being married to this young kid who's being married off to this princess, but the princess wants to be part of the sisterhood, but this is all happening the way it's supposed to happen. But that young kid couldn't give two shits about the princess, doesn't want to go through all this stuff. So when he gets burnt up, it feels bad for a kid being burnt up, but he's kind of a little bit of a prick. So you're like, okay, it's terrible.
Jesus, John.
Yeah, but it's not that I wish that to happen, but there are better people that could have happened to. But you see that there's elements of this, of like political machinations and intrigue. So you bring up House of the Dragon. That's absolutely the comparison you can make here. And the movements that are being done going into episode 2. So in episode 2, when you find out a little bit later in the episode that Atreides, who had this like sexual situation with the princess there at the bar before she gets married to the emperor, we find out that he is a plant. He is a spy. So now he's a spy in the house. Well, what's the deal that's going on with the son there of Mark Strong's character there? He's having sex with the woman, with the young daughter from the Ricchese family. She's trying to get information from him, which the Duke uses later. So it's like no one is really pure in any of this. And even the mom, by the way, who's played by Jodie May, for those of you remember, she's the younger sister in Last of the Mohicans, the one who throws herself off the cliff at the end of the movie. She is working with Desmond in essence, because she doesn't trust the Bene Gesserit. So she's okay with Desmond being part of this. And although she doesn't have the power of the voice, she does have the power of her own voice to convince the Emperor Mark Strong's character to kind of go along with her and what she wants to do and use Desmond in a way to go against the Bene Gesserit. So she's playing her own game behind the scenes with the Emperor as well, with what she wants to do. So there are so many different moves. The one who seems to be caught up in all of this is Mark Strong. And I've seen some criticism that you want to see more from him, more of a decisive movements, or more of a, stronger energy. But he's kind of caught up in between all this stuff. So he has to figure out where he's going to make a stand. And when he does choose to make a stand at the end there with Ricchese, when he's like, hey, you better cut that shit out, or I'm going to, I'm going to show you what the hell is up. And then Desmond walks in and burns Ricchese to his knees. Then you know that he's now ready to embrace a much more proactive approach to the whole situation, which I think is going to be interesting to see as we go along. And then the Lila and Tula stuff, which I think is really interesting. Is this going to be the relationship that breaks Tula and Valya from their connection, which would come out of episode 3, seeing very firmly how that connection was established? Is the Lila relationship going to be the difference here that separates things? And don't forget the girls, like all the young girls that are a part of the sisterhood. Now Jen is clearly, in essence, like the Valya, who is questioning things and wondering what the purpose is of the sisterhood. So what's Jen's role going to be in all of this as after what happened to Lila? So I like that episode laid a groundwork for all this intrigue and turmoil and division and civil war possibly going on within these factions. So I love that.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, that's interesting that you pointed out the criticism of Mark Strong, and I'm kind of like, that's criticism of the character and not the actor,
right? Of course, yes,
because that actor is doing exactly what he needs to do. Like, as an audience member, like, you might want the Emperor to take more decisive action, but I'm like, but that's not the character, at least at this point,
right?
And that's what makes for an interesting journey for a character to go on. That you have someone who is on their heels, and then suddenly they've been gifted this weapon. That no one has ever really had before. Someone that can actually stand up against the things that have traditionally pushed him around. So I'm like, watching Mark Strong such an interesting choice for the role, because historically he plays a lot of villains, he plays a lot of heavies, but he plays a lot of strong characters. And watching him in this role, this is a fascinating exercise, because this is a guy that is a bit of a beta. Because even though he's on the throne, he answers to a lot of folks. And so, again, watching someone have this kind of newfound power, what's he going to do with it? And again, for someone that doesn't know where the story's going, this is very intriguing.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like House of the Dragon, in that, you for those people who haven't read the books, you don't know what's going to happen to these characters. So you don't want to read the books, because you kind of just want to be surprised as you watch it there, as the show goes along. So yeah, definitely. So coming out of episode 2, we got these situations going on, but episode 3 here is a Sisterhood Above All. And this one is, as we said earlier, a flashback episode for the most part. And this one I thought was a fascinating episode to take a look at here, because I thought what Richard J. Lewis did as the director of this episode, and I thought the writing here from Monica Owusu-Breen and Jordan Goldberg was really good in taking us back in time. So let's break it down in this way. Let's talk about Valya's flashback story, then Tula's, and then we'll deal with the present stuff that Tula is doing that leads to that big reveal at the end. So Shannon, your thoughts on what we got here from Jessica Barden, who plays young Valya Harkonnen here. We get to see that we go back in time to their planet there. They're essentially skinning whales. We clearly see that her family, Mark Addy, her dad, and the great Polly Walker, who you all remember from a number of things, they're there to kind of show that they just are happy with their station, but it's Valya who's the one who has been forcing this whole situation, wanting more for her family, knowing that her family's been screwed over. We get to meet Tula there as well, a young who plays Emma Canning playing the young Tula, and then Griffin, their brother, is there, and Griffin's off to meet with Victor Atreides, and he's encouraged by Valya to maybe confront him. And then the next thing we see him, he's in a casket and he's dead. So Valya's anger is stemming from all of this, gets into the sisterhood. Raquel takes a shine to her because she's headstrong and she's determined, and Dorothea can't break her. And we see that Raquel is counseling her throughout this time, and then shows her what the big secret is, to which you don't find out till the end of the episode. But the big secret is of what she's doing here to kind of pair everybody up and take control of the houses and control of this world. And then by the end, she does not take the agony at first, goes home to talk to Tula about what Tula did, which we'll get to later, then does the agony herself, and is ready to become a queen mother and return to the sisterhood. So really strong backstory for her, but clearly the whole thing that's fueling everything that she's doing and anything that Bene Gesserit are doing is from this anger of her in seeking revenge against the Atreides clan. So what did you think about the backstory we got with Valya and the work here by Jessica Barden as the young Valya?
Yeah, Jessica Barden, great job. I mean, from the beginning, you get the sense that this is someone who is not satisfied. Like, you don't need lines to ascertain what she thinks about this chore that she is having to do. You're watching these massive whales being sort of broken down, and when the salesman or the butcher asks, like, what do you want? Like, the usual. I mean, like that line has so much depth to it.
Yeah.
Because she's saying, yes, give me what we always get, but it's also this is my life. It's the usual.
Yeah.
It's this repeating depression that I'm in. Like I'm in this harsh environment where it's always snowing. The only thing we can do to survive is to pack apart these whales. And so the moment that her mom, the actress from Rome, kind of criticizes her for like, do we need to tell you to ask for better stuff? And she's like, yeah, maybe you do. Like this, her whole worldview is our family name is tied to something grander, and this is what you are all satisfied with.
Right.
And it's not even, and it wasn't come upon honestly, at least the way that what we're being told right now.
How much of what Valya is telling us is the actual truth? Yeah, great point.
Yeah, their fate is tied, for what she says, to a lie that someone else told.
Yeah.
And you all have just you've rolled over and died. And her whole thing with Griffin, when Griffin, like, we get that first inclination that she has used the voice before, this thing that she sort of genetically has. And Griffin being sort of the hope of the family. He's going to go out and get them a better deal. And Valya convinces him to confront this individual who spread the lie. And immediately you see the results of that confrontation in that he's dead. I mean, Valya, like, she doesn't even want to go. Like, she doesn't want to go with the sisterhood. Like, no, I need to stay. I need to take care of you people the way I'm going to do it, because I'm not going to ask for the good cut of meat, but I'm going to remind you that we deserve something better. Her relationship with Dorothea, I thought, was fascinating. Again, on the heels of episode 1, where you see the result of their confrontation, and also episode 2, and you see Dorothea is still very much a player on the board. Granted, it's in this other realm, afterlife dimension, but she still wields a little bit of control, and she's got an axe to grind. So you see, you fill in the blanks of what happened there, and watching Raquella taking a shine to this young Harkonnen girl. I mean, the characters, even though we're not given a ton with each one, there's so much layered into what we're getting that as an audience, we're able to extrapolate a lot of the meeting, a lot of the relationship. And when it's time for her and Dorothea to take the agony, and she backs out. And this individual who has talked this big game, the moment that it's her chance, it's her opportunity, and she walks away. Like, again, that's just beautiful storytelling. And then you see that, she actually does do it later with, fatal results for Dorothea going down the line. I think the whole storyline is great. And Mark Addy is the uncle, right? He's not the dad.
Oh, I thought it was the dad. Okay, he's the uncle. Sorry about that.
I thought maybe I'm wrong. But then as we get to see Mark Addy, old ass Mark Addy, showing up at the very end of the episode, I mean, again, just a lot of just really, really compelling storytelling.
Yeah, I thought so too. And by the way, Jessica is 32 years old. That's kind of crazy that she's playing such a and recently, and from what I saw from New York Comic Con, is pregnant. So like, this is a woman about to become a mother if she hasn't already had her child. But like, it's a fascinating thing to think that she is 32 when she looks 21 when she's playing this character, or younger, which I think is a gift to her. And I remember her in Pieces of Her, that Netflix show. She played a young Toni Collette. So she's got a history of playing a younger version of these really strong British actresses, now doing a younger version of Emily Watson. And so I thought her performance here was fantastic. She's got this strength of will, these eyes that are just fire, and this jawline that is just jabbing through things, like pounding through things, almost like an icebreaker of a jawline here that absolutely wants to get what it wants. And look, as I said, as Shannon was alluding to, we don't know what the truth is here. She may have concocted this whole thing in her head that the Atreides have screwed her family over, and it fits for her narrative because she's tired of this life. She doesn't want to live this life. And we've seen this with people who are heroes and villains who break out of this humdrum existence because they think they're destined for more, and how that affects the people around them. And certainly a family that just wants to kind of keep their heads down and not attract any attention, having someone who wants to constantly call the family out for not being more proactive, for not being taking more of an initiative, or buying into her narrative about them getting screwed over, it's going to cause friction. And when it leads to the death of a favored son, you know that carries some weight for her, and her going off and her not wanting to be there. And we see, we meet Francesca, and I think that's a young Kasha that we meet. Their conversations there at the Sisterhood at was it McKellen 9, like the conversations they have with each other, you can see that she didn't even want to come to this thing, but her family's rejected her so much that she went. But she's picked this up, but she has this strength of will, and that's what allows her to stand out there all night in the rain, in the cold. There is a determination, a fierceness, right? Raquel notices this. Raquel takes stock of this, and I think that's the reason she takes her under her wing. She sees someone that is this headstrong, and if she can manipulate her and convince her to embrace the sisterhood, then her single-mindedness will allow the sisterhood to exist at any cost. As the episode says, sisterhood at all costs. That's there's two ways to look at that. Sisterhood at all costs, that you sacrifice for the sisterhood, or you do whatever it takes to keep the sisterhood alive. And that's where I think Dorothea and Valya have their differences here in how they approach things. But I love that Valya, as you said, it's so great in the narrative that she doesn't take the agony at first. She walks away. We even hear one of the women call her a coward as she's leaving to go back to her planet. But when she gets back there and her family rejects her all over again, and she almost kills her own mother with her voice, which I think is insane, that moment. And she even says, Polly does, like, what are you doing? And it's ironic because Polly has played some pretty vindictive and vicious characters in her past. So it's kind of fun to see her on the other side of this thing. But she walks out to the same area where her and Griffin had that conversation that sent him to confront Vitor Atreidis and essentially get killed by him. Or so she says, because we don't know how he got killed. She's telling us that that's how he got killed, but we don't really know. And her doing the agony in the same place where she saw Griffin, it's a great way to go full circle. I do feel like we were cheated that we didn't get to see more of her in that place like we did with Lila, but maybe there are things yet to be revealed for us as an audience just yet. And having Tula find her and having her, essentially Tula is the light that brings her out of that place. And then she says, we have a whole new mission now. I love that determination, but we as an audience, as audience members are like, well, wow, so the Bene Gesserit this is all driven by revenge. It's not driven by this ulterior motive to have the right people in place and all this. It's driven by this revenge from Valya. So it's so interesting to see that play itself out. Now, let's move to Tula here. And again, I want to call out the young actress who plays Tula, Emma Canning. I don't know how old she is. She seems like she's only in her 20s, but who knows? It could be 30. I don't know. But Shannon, your thoughts on the Tula story here? We see as we talked about, like she's not a strong voice in the family. Valya clearly the one causing issues. Tula's trying to be the good one here, trying to keep people at peace. She's the one that tries to bring Valya back into the house after the funeral for Griffin, and she refuses. Valya refuses to do it, so Tula feels the sympathy for her. And then we see Tula in this situation with Ori, this young guy. We find out he's an Atreides. This is an Atreides clan, and we think to ourselves, is this a Romeo and Juliet situation? What's going on here? How is this all going down? And we see her teaching this young kid who's got the leg issue there, the leg brace there, about how to gut these animals, pull the poison out. So kind of giving us a little bit of a plant there. And there's a big hunt happening. And then we see her get marriage proposed to her by Ori, and they've only known each other for a few months. She reveals the next morning after they have sex amongst the chants of Atreides there by the bonfire that she's not actually Tula Vale. She's Tula Harkonnen, and he is actually really understanding about it all. It's like, look, that was a century ago. We can lay a new path forward. We don't have to take that stuff on. It's very, very intelligent thinking there. But as he walks out, because it's so quiet, we see in essence that Tula has killed the entire Atreides clan, including, it seems like, Vitor, who I think was the guy who came up while she was gutting stuff to talk to her. Everybody's been killed, and then she eventually kills Ori, but the young kid with the brace, he comes upon this stuff. She tells him to go, and then she looks up and sees this bull there, and then sends the message to Valya to let her know what she's done in coded language. And when they show up at the house, it is actually Tula who saves Valya and brings her out and is now committed to her and is going with her back to the sisterhood to be part of the sisterhood herself as well. So interesting stuff. What did you think of the backstory with Tula here that we got in this episode and the performance from Emma Canning in this role?
Again, another great performance. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head who the casting director for this show is, but I mean,
Oh,
everyone from the names to your day players, like everyone is just delivering a very convincing performance. Like when
yeah.
when you forget that these are performers and it's like you're watching these characters live. Yeah, I mean, her journey makes total sense. I
Yeah.
mean, and again, having not known where it's going, when we see her end up with the Atreides
Yeah.
with Ori after everything that's transpired, like we know she's going to eventually end back up with Valya.
Right. Right.
But this moment where it's kind of like, oh my gosh, is like her family is so wrecked
Yeah.
that she is actually like fled into the arms of an enemy. Like
Yeah.
this is fascinating. I mean, I love that as they're kind of taking apart the bait animals, and she takes out that little sack and she explains that, like, you know, sometimes I can't remember what the actual line was, but some things have strength underneath that you're not aware is there.
Right.
And, you know, she's referring to herself. I mean, she is essentially the bait that has come in here and is about to wipe out this whole, you know, branch of the Atreides clan. So as they're kind of asking her, like, has Ori met your people? Like, they're kind of doing some polite digging, like,
Yeah.
like, oh, so who are you again? Oh, okay. And it seems like everybody's nice.
Yes.
Everyone seems like a decent person. I mean, you can see she does have there is a heart under there, because when Ori's horse breaks its leg and she's trying to come up with solutions, and even as her solutions are being kind of batted aside, they're being batted aside in kind of a nice way. It's like, horse live on their feet. Nope. If you put him in a sling, he'd kill himself trying to kick out of it.
Right.
Like there's just no way for this to work out well. And as Ori takes that blade out and she goes and grabs the sack, and it's kind of like, who is she doing that for?
Yeah.
Is she doing that for Ori so he doesn't have to kill this horse that he clearly loved, or is she doing that for the horse? Like, am I trying to ease your passing right now? I like to think that it's for Ori. That despite her, you know, black ops mission to go in there and kill everybody, like she actually does have some affection for him. And even the night before, when they're all kind of around, like, you know, around the fire, and she's saying, hey, shouldn't you go out there? Like, this wasn't the plan for him to stay. Like, the plan was for him to die with everybody else. And then at the end of this marriage proposal, and she can see how much he actually does care about her. The next morning, when the deed is done, like those guys are dead. The next morning, you can see as she's kind of breaking down. I mean, one, there's the confession of who she is and what has actually transpired. Also, the realization she's going to have to kill him face to face. And the whole thing about poison is something that's a seed you can plant. That's going to take care of itself. Nope, she has to do this. She has to listen to this guy confess his feelings, and then she has to look him in the eyes and kill him. Like, that is a fascinating journey. And then to see how Valya really kind of welcomes her back in open arms, and like the whole, like, she did, like, as she's calling out the rest of the family at the table, like, she had the guts to do what none of you did. Yeah, I mean, it was just really, really enjoyable storytelling.
Yeah, and they want to default to saying that she's like, oh, she was manipulated by Valya. Valya's the villain. Valya's the issue. But Tula has her own bloodthirsty revenge. She's not as overt as Valya, which is why she doesn't have the voice. Because she does. So since she doesn't have the voice, she has to use other tools that she has. And her innocent face, her innocent demeanor, her empathetic demeanor can, as you said, Shannon, hide a poison underneath, hide a violence underneath that can come out. Because look, as you said, it wasn't supposed to be him staying in the tent and proposing marriage, but she went with it, troubleshooted the situation, got some pleasure out of having sex with him, because she clearly had feelings for him. I think she did develop affection for him. And even the way he responded the next morning, you have to say to yourself, wow, she really did care about him. And she kills him with mercy, like she killed the horse. So it's a reflection there that she didn't want him to die in the way that she slaughtered everybody else. This was much more. But it's an amazing thing to think about, that Tula hooked up with the dude, had sex with the guy, then he passed out. And while he was passed out, she went one by one through the entire people there and killed them all, or she had poisoned the meat in some way, whatever it was.
That's what I think.
Yeah, she was able to kill all of them in one fell swoop as they were celebrating, as they're all out there, and you hear the flies and all of that, and then calmly go back to bed and go to sleep with him. So, I mean, this is the thing, that she has a ruthlessness in a way that is unsettling in different ways. Hers is much less overt and much more under the surface, which can make it more dangerous. And she's clearly going to follow her own compass, as we see at the end of the episode. So I love that you saw a Tula that is as formidable as Valya, but will go where her mind takes her, whether it's with Valya or not, because she has her own compass no matter what happens. And I really appreciated that. And I thought Emma Canning did a great job in playing the different levels of what she had to do, and especially when she had to kill Ori, just the reaction she had and the tears in her eyes. And then that bull, that massive bull coming up, a lot of symbolism there as well in terms of the strength and the power there to show, and the respect, because the bull doesn't come down and attack, just kind of walks off after it sees another person of strength there sitting there killing people. But
that bull's saying thank you, because those guys were going to kill him.
Yeah, basically, in essence. And also the other side of this, she lets the young kid go. So there is an empathetic side to Tula, no matter what the bloodshed is, because you can kind of excuse that as, okay, if you do buy the narrative, the Atreides did this to the Harkonnen. So in essence, what she's doing is part of a century-long battle, as we hear Ori say. So this is part of the war. But you letting the young kid go shows you the empathy. I don't think Valya would have let the young kid go, but Tula does. So there's a difference in approach, no matter how ruthless both can be. Tula seems to be the one that has a little more empathy to her, which I think will be interesting to see as the show goes along. Let's get to the present day stuff here. Shannon, let's talk about it. I mean, we start the episode with Tula very much recovering or dealing with the loss of Lila there, lying on the mat there in essence. And she's being told in essence that, she is by Mother Avila, that she's got to let her go, and that the rules, and what Valya has said in the past, that when young sisters get into this condition, you have to, or any of the mothers get into this condition, you have to let them go. She's in essence keeping her alive, kind of in a coma stasis, or as a vegetable in essence. And we see the other sisters gather around when they're saying goodbye to her, and Jen is upset. Jen is mad. Jen is pushing back on what Tula and Avila did and what they're saying, because Lila was clearly someone who had questions about the situation. And then eventually, after they all say their goodbyes, you see that Lila has, in essence, been kept alive by Tula. She goes down under the tunnels there, and there's this machine at the end, this AI, in essence, that is being revealed at the end. Let me read the name here if I've got it. Anarul, which apparently Raquela had created to use the spice to keep certain people alive, keep certain bloodlines alive, and pair them up. So it's a fascinating ending, and Lila apparently will have a bigger part to play probably down the road here, which is why Tula is keeping her alive. So what did you think about all of this stuff here in the present day of the show with Tula, Avila, Lila's body, Jen, and then that reveal of Anarul at the end here?
I mean, narratively, at the end of the second episode, killing an innocent, basically. Yeah. I thought narratively, I'm like, that's a really strong choice, because that shows you that demonstrates what kind of world we're being introduced to, as well as the lengths that Valya is willing to go to achieve her goals.
Yeah.
Tula being kept alive, like you had said a moment ago, that she leads with her head. I mean, I think she leads with her heart, and that's why she kept Lila alive. I mean, Lila was the one who said, when I was growing up, I used to pretend you were my mom, and she's like, well, you're not the same for me. I used to pretend that I was your mom too. Yeah. So looking at the moment where the older mother basically goes in to take over, and we see a ferocity in Tula that we've not yet seen, and how she smacks her hands away and just like, no, like, I've got it. Yeah, and then at the end, when we see that she is keeping Lila alive, and that conversation that she does have with the computer programs, the computer's like, this isn't what we do. She's like, nope, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. The story isn't just how the Bene Gesserit is going to deal with the threats from the outside, but also the threats from the end. how Tula is not quite the obedient sister that Valya probably thinks she is, but also they have to deal with the ghost of Dorothea that is wielding some power. So, I mean, the whole situation that is being presented, again, it's just really fertile ground for storytelling. And a lot of times when you have a story, like you might be into one story and not another. This happens a lot with network TV, especially old network TV, is, you know, you're stretching the storytelling out over 22 episodes. You're trying to do as much as you can. There are always those stories, Nikki and Paolo and Lost Season 3.
Oh God, yeah.
Every time it goes, you're like, fuck, I don't care about these two. Every story within this is interesting. Now, I think there are shifting levels of interest, but they're all interesting. And watching how the interpersonal dynamics of the Bene Gesserit is really kind of coming to the forefront, it's just, again, very, very compelling television.
Yeah, and I agree. And seeing, I think you're right. She leads with her heart as opposed to her mind, but does what needs to get done when the situation calls for it. Maybe not in the way that people expect, and that's what makes her a powerful character. But seeing what she does here, I agree with you. Like Avila, remember, Avila is the one that came to her, was not necessarily that confident that she could do what needed to be done, kept throwing Valya's name in her face to kind of show Tula, hey, your sister's little, you know, she can handle this stuff. I don't know if you can. And even Tula calls her out and says, no matter how many spies my sister sends to me, I'm going to do what needs to get done. And you guys don't have to worry about it. So she's aware of how little bit of faith that her sister has for her. In the last episode, she says that as well. Like, you know, I know you think I'm not up to the task, but I can do it. And you can tell Valya that has a little bit of hesitation about leaving the sisterhood or the school in charge with Tula. So Tula very clearly has that strength to do what needs to get done. And it's kind of ironic that Valya, of all people, is overlooking her strength in this situation. And so when we see what she does here at the end with Lila and in essence discovering that Raquella is using a thinking machine, which of course is not supposed to be done, I think it's a massive thing. But it's so interesting that it's Tula who's using the thinking machine here to carry out this plan to keep Lila alive. So it's a fascinating approach to all of this. But yes, the other side of this, and as we wrap up here, we should talk about present day with Valya and what she goes through here. You know, meeting up with the mothers. Her and Theodosia are going to this place, but she meets up with the other mothers, tells them, "Hey, keep everybody in line." Gets the information from that one mother who's got the rebel information of the names and all of that. Gets the message about Tula and what she's done there with Lila, and then Lila's passing for now. And then she ends up meeting up at the end there with Evgeny Harkonnen, and that's who Mark Addy is playing, and her young nephew, which is Griffin Harkonnen, named for her brother. So a fascinating situation that old man is still contemptuous of her as he sits in this massive castle and high-rise penthouse, as opposed to the cave he was living in the snow. So clearly there's still a bit of familial issues with Valya, even though it has proven to be a positive for the family overall. What do you think of what we got for the present day stuff with Valya here in this particular episode?
I mean, the really fascinating thing with Mark Addy is they were content on that planet. Like there were no sour grapes.
Yeah.
Valya and Tula's mom, dad, uncle, they were content. Like this is our life. This is what we do. And so even though her elevation and status has led to some grander things, it kind of came about in a distasteful way for Mark Addy's character.
Wow.
I mean, is he enjoying parts of it? Probably, but the fact that his niece is this sorceress, that he's just like, this doesn't sit well with me. Right. So again, just watching the progression of that relationship, because even at that first dinner on the Harkonnens' planet, talking about whale fur. And he's like, you mock, but this is real. Like this is how we have to operate.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, Mark Addy is just he's just always such a fantastic performer to watch, and knowing that he is going to have a further role in the story is very encouraging.
Yeah, the young man we meet, as I said, is Haro Harkonnen. He is going to be a person who plots to restore the Harkonnen house to greatness. So I think there's going to be some more coming. Edward Davis is playing that character, so there will be more to see, I think, in her movement with him, and the fact that she's going back to her family after it seems like she's being rejected across the board by Jericho and the crew there. Sorry, I forget his name, the Emperor's name, but his crew there. It's, I think, speaks volumes about where she needs to go in order to restore her strength and get back into the house there, to get in control of the house and restore herself to power. So it's gonna be interesting with the Harkonnens and all of that as it goes forward. Any final words here as we wrap up our review, Shannon? Where you think we're going into episode 4? What you want to see next? Any final words here?
Man, I got no idea. I am lost at sea on this show, but in the best way possible. I was not expecting to take a shine to it the way I have, so I'm just excited for some more great HBO programming on Sunday nights.
I agree. It's great. I have not read the book as well, so for me, this is all kind of new and interesting. And if we messed any names up or any allusions to things, please forgive us, because we're just figuring this out on the fly. But the overall thing we're reviewing here is the quality, the performances, the writing, the direction, the cinematography, the special effects, and the casting, and they are nailing it all across the board in this series. And I think, if I'm not wrong, the voices, just like the voices we hear sometimes in the show, are getting louder and louder of people enjoying this series. So we are going to keep covering the series and reviewing the series as we go along, because now it's kind of come into all three of us, our worlds, and we're enjoying it. So we want to discover it with you all and break it down and discuss it. So we'll be doing that. So excuse us for getting the names wrong or the locations wrong, but with the overall sentiment of the review is that it's a pretty positive show and we're enjoying it from top to bottom. And we'll see.
No offense. No offense.
We'll see what comes up here as we go into episode 4. But clearly everyone's got their own little secret and game that they're playing, Shannon. And it's going to be interesting to see how this all moves around with the people in power, because we do know how it ends up, and that the Bene Gesserit stay in power eventually. So how is this going to happen over these next 3 episodes? I'm going to be real curious to see as we go along in this series for sure. All right, there you go. That's our spoiler review for episode 3, and with a little bit of thoughts of episode 2 as well, and our overall thoughts on this series. Thank you so much for joining us, Shannon. What do we have to tell them?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow us on social media, on Twitter, it's at @geek_buddies, on Instagram at @the_geek_buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's at Shannon_McClung, on Instagram at Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you'd like to follow the absent Mr. Vogel, it's at MKToon. If you'd like to follow the present Mr. Rocha, it is at The Rocha Says.
Thank you, Shannon. Yes, and to everybody, a reminder to follow us on all our social media and to subscribe to the channel down below and hit that bell button. Give us your thoughts on what's going on in episode 3. What did you think about all the backstory? What did you think about the present stories with Valya and with Tula? What are your thoughts about where we're going with the House Harkonnen? What are your thoughts about the prophecy, right? We didn't even touch on the prophecy, but it seems to point to Desmond. Twice born? Is it Desmond? It might be someone else that we haven't even thought of. So we will see as it goes along here into this 4th episode. Let us know what you thought about all down in the comment section below. And please remember to subscribe to the podcast channel. The numbers are growing step by step with the podcast channel. So please come aboard the podcast channel as well, wherever you download podcasts for the Geek Buddies. Just in case you don't want to see our pretty faces or you can't, you can always listen to our thoughts on all that stuff there on the podcast channel. All right, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget, our spoiler review for the first 2 episodes of Skeleton's Crew will be out as well very soon, and we'll talk to you next time with another brand new spoiler review of Dune Prophecy here from the
Geek Buddies.